So thank you for coming. Basically, we will run through a series of mapping projects that we have done, and this image is Istanbul sort of as a tourist, what you see, just as a reminder to some of you who have been there and as a kind of introduction to those who haven't. And if you're a little bit more adventurous and cross to the Asian side, this is what you would find. And also, if you talk about Istanbul today as a sort of financial center and sort of the rising star of whatever, this is the image that you might be interested in. Why do I have one? But reality of Istanbul is also relatively informal. But what does that mean? We can also dwell upon that later. One of the projects I would like to talk to you about is the Mapping Istanbul project. It was basically came after the Dolmuş minibus map we shared with you on Friday. That art gallery or architecture gallery commissioned us to do a more in-depth study, and together we basically with the editors of the book we sat down and made a whole list of maps that we would like to see and what data was available and what we could kind of put together. It wasn't really a very it didn't have any other purpose than just making things visible. It didn't come in a moment of stress like in Cairo right now. We had the time, we had the leisure in a way to do it, but there was a definite lack of visualizations, that there was a definite lack of sort of owning the city, or what is a citizen of Istanbul, and all of these, like who, again, similar issues of who has a right of decision making in the city and so forth. So just to allow the tools of visualization sort of accessible to everyone. But saying that, the book is only produced in English, so and is only was printed as 1,500 copies. So obviously that's also debatable a little bit. But it made sense for the editorial team and the commissioning team to keep it that way. Okay, so here is, for example, the map of all the cities that are larger than 2 million across the world. Just to look at connectivity of Istanbul to the rest of the world. Here's the flights direct flights out of Turkey or out of Istanbul. The green areas represent the countries that Turkish passport can travel without visa. So you'll see somehow a mismatch. Here you will also, this was the bus routes starting from Istanbul to Anatolia, rest of the country. You will see, of course, also partly due to the distances, but also because of the sort of the demographic changes in the city. There is a east and a west, and this is one of the biggest political discussions in the country right now. And here you see it even more clear. This was for me one of the most emotional slides, because we always talk about the east, but the darker the color, the better the education levels. So here you see almost the east is almost invisible. But then when we focused on the city, this was the growth of the city over the centuries. The darker being the older parts of the town, and the lightest represents the last 10 years of growth. So it's also last 20 years has been quite a big spread. And then this map shows the sort of the stress areas, because the city follows a very simple logic, actually, that if there is water and view, it's more higher economic income levels, smaller families, white-collar jobs, more education levels. But if we can go back one slide, but the brown parts basically show the areas where the rules don't match the reality. So the brown areas actually show the areas which are under stress of urban renewal projects, because from a real estate point of view, the people who live there don't make enough money as what the land normally should suggest. So that's also kind of a clue to trace the changes in the city. Again, it's an education levels map. It follows the pattern that I was describing earlier. All of these demographic maps come from census data. It's the government initiated address-based census in 2006 maybe, So the data is not readily available, but if you ask for it, you can get it. So there is a possibility to access that. Here is the bus map, all the bus lines. And this data was collected through basically the bus service has a website that has all the lines identified one by one. So if you go through it all and kind of chart it all together and overlay them, you can create the map, but it doesn't really exist otherwise. This was the hospitals. No, the top 500 companies in Turkey, the ones that are in Istanbul, where the clusters are in terms of business. This data, it comes from the Chamber of Industry and Chamber of Commerce. They have address-based data that we kind of use to make the map. This was the sports, the green soccer fields. Istanbul is sort of a city which has very limited recreational areas, and in some ways the city's B plan is to make these soccer fields, which are astroturf fields. And then the last slide that we will show now is the street bazaars, all the public street bazaars that change every day of the week.
So the same work later then also became an exhibition. So it's kind of interesting how we, let's say, try to bring it out to a larger audience than just, let's say, whoever bought the book. So it became part of this, I skipped through it fast, but exhibition called Becoming Istanbul that contained both a database. So we designed the space where you browse this database. It also contained 2 event spaces, one where every day there was a talk for 90 days, that's due to the name 90, and the other space were a game space where Dutch urbanists initiated games on the city and subjects of the city. So here's this event space configured as this 3-dimensional calendar. And the game space was more playful. So imagine you being in a museum. Normally you're not in the mode of let's say participation. So it was a more playful, let's say, design.
Most of the components in this exhibition were about archiving and collecting, so all the events were documented and they're on a database now, and we asked sort of the people to contribute with questions to the city, so we had sort of 2 computers out where you could type questions, and this became sort of a signage throughout the building. So here you see questions collected, and they were sort of in real time posted up on the LEDs. Here's another, we will run through this very quickly also, the design demographics work we did for the biennial last year. And the idea was to look at what kind of design infrastructure exists across the country, what are the sort of blind spots, what is the availability, what are the clusters. And here you see again, areas which are totally blacked out in terms of design education. Here you will see the registered architects, urban planners, and landscape architects. So you'll see also, again, cities in the east that have 1 urban planner, 1 architect, and maybe no landscape designer. So this, just to see, yes, we have this design biennial happening now, but what is actually the landscape that this thing is taking place in? And another kind of issue in Turkey is how the public projects are bidded out, and they don't often come through competitions. This was a map of the competitions the last 10 years. And you'll see they only happen in 2 clusters, Ankara and Istanbul, and the rest is sort of 1 at a time, maybe every 5 years. So this is the registered area to the Chamber of Architects. So it doesn't represent the full square meters that gets built, but gives an idea what is the construction scene. And again, how the schools around the country and how many sort of different types of students they have, from master's students to what's their Erasmus outreach and so forth, documented. This particular map, we actually really contacted all the schools one by one to get their data, so it took some time to put it together.
The last project we'll show is actually our contribution to the project is not the most important. The project itself is much more interesting. So in the east of Turkey, in Diyarbakir, in the early 90s, there was a lot of suicide among women. NGOs came to Diyarbakir to wanting to help, but basically couldn't get in contact with the people they want to be in contact with. So they devised this, let's say, decoy of setting up laundry mats where people could come and do their laundry, and thereby they could get contact to the women. It was now legitimate to come out of the house, and they gave then counseling in the back of these laundry mats.
The laundry mats were for free, so that's kind of an important detail.
So our role in this project was to document the NGOs, what they offer, where they're placed in the city. But let's say the outcome of the project became at the Rotterdam Architectural Biennial. You can of course discuss if that's the right venue to, let's say, exhibit or put a project like this. Like, it's not really where is it?
Yeah, the initial idea was to make it into also a printed map that could be distributed to the municipality in Diyarbakir. But the reality of the project, actually, there was no funding beyond the exhibition, so it didn't sort of take off. But now there's a lot to learn from actually what the project you guys are doing with Curl. This is roughly it, I think, for now. We're very excited about the discussion.